The Incredible Hulk is the strongest one there is. While a founding member of the Avengers on page and screen, the Hulk has always been a loner, as often on the run from the law and hiding away as he is out saving the world. But when push comes to shove, the Hulk fights evil, with a soft spot for the defenseless and vulnerable. But what happens when the Hulk is completely unleashed from all morals and any sense of right and wrong? Enter Kluh, the Hulk's Hulk, a twisted representation of Dr. Bruce Banner's darkest self and potential for evil, brought out by the Red Skull after he stole the mind of Professor Charles Xavier of the X-Men. Kluh is the inversion of the Hulk and his ultimately heroic nature, right down to the name being Hulk backwards. A little on the nose, but when you're as tough as Kluh, you can call yourself whatever you want. This super powerful monster was in fact strong enough to fight off the combined strength of Thor, Scarlet Witch, and Luke Cage along with the other Avengers. Origin of the Hulk. To appreciate what makes Kluh unique among the various forms of the Hulk, let's dive back into the past and look at how the Hulk came to be, because it's not as simple as it first appears. Everyone knows the brilliant scientist Bruce Banner transforms into the giant green behemoth that is the Hulk when he gets angry. This raging, muscle-bound bulldozer is one of the most powerful characters in all of comics, and he just loves to smash. But the Hulk is not just Bruce Banner's loss of control. The Hulk is a separate and distinct personality from Bruce Banner. In fact, Banner's fractured mind and traumatic childhood resulted in many different personalities and identities referred to as alters in the comics. The most famous Hulk, the simple-minded Hulk smash variety, is Banner's primary alter, a childlike manifestation of his repressed trauma. Bruce Banner suffers from a severe form of dissociative identity disorder, which was repressed through most of his life until the gamma bomb explosion that created the Hulk. That event resulted in Banner's mental struggles physically manifesting in a violent transformation that would unleash all of the rage and anger Banner had taught himself to hide from the world. Banner's childhood was a dark one. His father was an abusive alcoholic who physically attacked both Bruce and his mother. To try to get by, Bruce hid away all of his emotions, believing any misstep would cause his father to hurt him. The Savage Hulk, Banner's primary alter, is in many ways the child that Banner locked away. Mostly innocent, but ruled by emotion, this Hulk is particularly concerned with the well-being of others, particularly children and animals. The Hulk is also defensive and protective of Banner, though they do vie for control over their body. Over time, more alternate versions would be revealed, each representing a different aspect of Bruce Banner's trauma and insecurity. Banner has a whole host of personalities living inside of his head, and each is distinct. This depth and exploration makes Banner one of comics' most interesting heroes, as his fragile psyche constantly wars against itself. But while these distinct personalities and variations on the classic Hulk are all unique and distinct from one another, they all have a common root in Bruce Banner's personality and his rage, except for one. Kluh, brought from the recesses of the Hulk's mind and one of the most powerful and dangerous forms of the Hulk ever seen. Before we go any further, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for some plot armors today. This is a new channel and we'd appreciate all the support we can get. The Inversion. During the Marvel event series Avengers and X-Men Axis, the evil Red Skull stole the mind of the deceased Professor X and used his powers to amplify the hate in the minds of everyone on the planet. This resulted in violence throughout the world, including the torture of mutants on the island of Genosha. One of those mutants was Magneto, who has a tragic history with the Red Skull and the Nazis who created him. In an act of vengeance for the capture of his fellow mutants, Magneto killed the Red Skull, but instead of stopping the Skull's psychic assault, it unleashed the dark side of Professor X's powers and turned Red Skull into the supremely powerful Red Onslaught. The Avengers arrived on Genosha too late to stop Magneto, but attempted to stop this new, more powerful version of Red Skull. During the battle with Red Onslaught, Hulk was in his dark green form, a version of the Hulk that retained Bruce Banner's personality and intelligence. During the battle, he was, like most of the Avengers, captured by Iron Man's adamantium Sentinels. These Sentinels were designed by Iron Man to specifically target the weaknesses of his allies and subdue them. Even though Iron Man had never written those plans anywhere, the Red Skull used his psychic abilities to conjure the plans and make them reality. These amped up robots defeated and captured the Avengers, leaving Iron Man the lone hero standing. Magneto, having disappeared from the battle earlier, soon arrived back on the scene with a team of supervillains to defeat the Sentinels. Iron Man might have had the familiarity and knowledge of all his teammates' weaknesses, but he did not account for the villains in his designs of these Sentinels, and their dirty tricks proved helpful in holding the Sentinels at bay. While the villains kept Red Skull and his machines occupied, they were able to buy time for the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom to cast a spell that combined order and chaos energies to invert the Red Skull's mind and release the dormant personality of Professor X and put an end to to his reign of terror. Their spell would spread over the whole island of Genosha, but as a result, all of the heroes awoke without memory of what had happened between casting the spell and waking up together again. The villains had all disappeared. With Red Skull unconscious, the heroes considered the victory won, but the X-Men and Avengers clashed over how to handle the Skull's body. It's not uncommon for the X-Men and Avengers to be on opposite sides of a conflict, but this was a particularly petty argument that hinted that something was not quite right. Both sides had valid arguments, and a simple conversation would have reached a compromise. As the weeks went on, the Avengers became more and more arrogant. Captain America, Sam Wilson, fought with Nick Fury about how to handle the Red Skull, with Cap arguing the Avengers were the only ones who could handle him. Fury wanted to follow the rules of law and have Skull go to prison and stand trial, not be held in the basement of Avengers Tower. Hulk, standing behind Captain America, was clearly not himself, once again speaking like a child and backing down from the conflict. He tried to encourage Cap to listen to Fury, but was quickly shot down without any further argument. For a character all about conflict and anger, this quiet and timid Hulk was a clear sign that things were not quite as victorious as they seemed. At Avengers Tower, the heroes began to talk about how they felt free, like a fog had been lifted, that it freed them from the need to put others before themselves. They wanted to make sure nothing would happen to the Red Skull that might reverse whatever happened on Genosha that made this change possible. Hulk thought the others intended to hide the Red Skull, but they soon revealed that they planned to kill him. When the Avengers' faithful butler, Jarvis, heard this plan, he bravely stood up to the inverted heroes and their villainous plot. "The Avengers are not executioners, you are defenders of life," he pleaded. Jarvis was easily and violently tossed aside by Scarlet Witch, but Hulk stopped to check on his good friend, Jarvis. Seeing that Hulk was the only hero with any remaining sense of compassion, Jarvis pleaded with the Jade Giant to stop the others. Hulk stepped in front of the Skull's cell, standing up for Jarvis and affirming that the Avengers were not killers. Avengers no hurt, Avengers no kill. It almost seemed like the rest of the Avengers had turned dark from the magic spell. Hulk's more antisocial tendencies had been wiped out, making him as meek and lacking confidence as Bruce Banner. Or at least it seemed that way until Luke Cage attacked Hulk to get through, and then told him, "Stay down, dummy." The inversion must have also made Luke Cage a fool on top of being evil, because anyone should know better than to taunt the Hulk. Instead of making him angry, Cage's actions had actually hurt the Hulk's feelings. While the inversion spell had impacted most of the heroes to make them more angry and impulsive, Hulk had become more sensitive and vulnerable. Hulk could not believe that his friends would hurt him, and being hit made him sad. And you wouldn't like when Hulk is sad. When the Hulk gets sad, that's when Kluh comes out. The Hulk sadness transformed into a new, monstrous black version with a rocky exterior and veins that appeared like rivers of flowing molten lava. This Hulk had glowing red eyes and a white mohawk and towered over the other Avengers. With his rock-like crags and sharp edges, Kluh was anything but soft and vulnerable like the inverted version of the Green Hulk. This new monstrous Hulk reflected the absolute extremes of Bruce Banner's most dangerous impulses. The Hulk's Hulk, not triggered by Banner's weak rage. Kluh was eager to bathe in the blood of the innocent. Kluh was not righteous fury, but ruthless bloodlust. He claimed to be lying dormant, listening to these goody two-shoes Avengers for years. Where Jarvis thought they were too rotten, Kluh knew they were not rotten enough. He fought off the Avengers, shrugging off Scarlet Witch's magic spells, and busted out of the Avengers Tower to cause some sweet destruction. After escaping a trap set by the inverted Avengers to imprison all the superheroes who might stand in their way, Spider-Man and the new young superhero Nova were able to rendezvous with Steve Rogers, now physically aged due to the loss of his super soldier serum. Don't worry, he got better, to regroup and strategize. They soon discovered that Magneto and other villains had become heroic, while the Avengers were becoming villainous. When news footage of Kluh's rampage in Arizona hit the news, Nova sped off alone to stop him. Kluh was rampaging for the cameras, causing mass destruction just to draw the attention of a worthy challenger who was ready to fight. Where the Hulk often finds himself at odds with other heroes, and even occasionally relishes in unleashing his strength to prove he is the strongest, there is always a sense of regret or righteous fury behind those battles. For Kluh, there is no righteousness. It is the desire to prove himself the most powerful above all else for no reason than to satisfy his sadistic desire for violence and feed a massive ego. Kluh vs. Nova. Kluh had no purpose or mission other than to just burn civilization to the ground. He was not interested in ruling the world, the only thing he wanted was to inflict as much pain as possible. When the teen hero Nova arrived on the scene to protect his family, Kluh was all too happy to torture the child, deriving a sick pleasure from beating up a kid and even seemingly hungry for human flesh. Not exactly the jolly green giant we know and love. Nova, inexperienced and in over his head, knew he was outmatched and overwhelmed with pain. As the evil Hulk chomped down on his arm, Nova began to cry and pass out. He managed to rally, however, at the thought of his family, and broke free, landing a punch in Kluh's oversized nostril, gross, and then releasing a powerful beam of energy. Nova barely had time to celebrate before Kluh got back up and landed a punch on the teen so powerful it sent him flying from Arizona all the way to Paris. The attack was so strong that Nova could not even remember his battle with the Twisted Hulk. After waking up in a hospital in France, he also discovered the alien helmet that provides the source of his power was damaged. Shaken up by the fight, but knowing he was one of the only heroes left to stop the inverted Avengers, Nova jumped back into action despite not being healed. As Kluh continued rampaging through the desert, singing and laughing at all of his mayhem, he decided to do something more fun than damage property: squash a few children. Still hurt and in a cast, Nova arrived to stop Kluh, putting his own young life on the line to save the school children that Kluh was targeting. He knew he was no physical match for the creature now, and instead of trying to fight head on, Nova used the iron cables from the nearby suspension bridge Kluh had just destroyed and used his speed to wrap it around the monster. With too much time, Kluh would escape, so Nova moved quickly and pushed himself to the limit, reaching escape velocity, all while Kluh screamed that he would kill Nova. Breaking through Earth's atmosphere, Nova tossed Kluh out into orbit. Nova fought the Hulk and won. It would only be a stalling tactic to buy the heroes and inverted villains time to regroup, however, as not even being launched into space would be enough to permanently stop this monster. Embarrassed by his defeat, Kluh rejoined the inverted Avengers and their plan to kill the X-Men so they would not be able to stand in their way of dominance. As the teams of former heroes clashed, they also had to contend with the inverted villains trying to reverse the spell that has caused all this mayhem in the first place. Enjoying his newfound sense of freedom, Kluh was determined to not let anyone stop his fun. As the elderly Steve Rogers pleaded with his friend Sam Wilson to remember his real nature, Kluh threatened Steve, threatening to tear his son in half. A brutal tactic that showed how little regard the evil behemoth had for life. He was, however, stopped by Apocalypse and Deadpool, who broke through a wall and gave Steve a chance to escape with the Red Skull in order to reverse the inversion spell. With the combined power of Doctor Doom and Scarlet Witch, the heroes were successful in reversing the spell and resetting all but a few heroes and the villains back to their true nature. Kluh was gone, leaving Bruce Banner with nothing but foggy memories of another rampage. Kluh, the strongest Hulk. Kluh's raw strength is bad enough, but it is coupled with Bruce Banner's sheer brilliance and all the bitterness and jealousy that man has ever felt. All of these things combined make Kluh the most terrifying and potentially dangerous fallout of the Axis event. Hulk has never been a traditional hero, but he still does what he thinks is right in the end, using his powers for good. But Kluh is raw power unleashed. Right away, Kluh proves he's basically invincible, not just to physical attacks, but magic ones as well. When the Scarlet Witch tried to use her chaos magic to subdue him, Kluh was able to just deflect her attack with just the sound of his voice. Even with Avengers powerhouses like Luke Cage and Thor present, Kluh was able to handily escape and wreak havoc. In the final battle between the X-Men and Avengers, Kluh was able to easily handle Rogue, who was one of the strongest X-Men at that time, until he was interrupted by Apocalypse, an ancient mutant with power to take on all of the X-Men. But even that wasn't enough to put a stop to Kluh, who was later seen doing battle with the Absorbing Man, a longtime Hulk villain who has the power to take on the properties of any material he touches. In this battle, he'd absorbed the mystical metal that forged Thor's enchanted axe. Despite this mystical power-up, he was no match for the Dark Hulk. The greatest display of Kluh's strength, though, has to be in the brutal assault on the young Nova. Despite his youth, Nova is a powerhouse, an interstellar hero supercharged with concussive beams of force, super strength, and a protective and explosive aura that keeps him safe from the vacuum of space. Nova is also able to travel at the speed of light, giving his attacks a significant boost. Other Novas have been seen to tussle with such cosmic super beings as Silver Surfer, Thanos, and even the World Eater, Galactus. Despite all this, nothing Nova did to Kluh so much as hurt the monster. Kluh was able to so overpower the Nova Force that he shattered the bones in the teen hero's arm just by biting him. While the regular Hulk may be able to achieve some of these feats, he will always be held back by his desire to protect innocent people. Rarely does the Hulk ever kill, even in his rampages. He can also be outsmarted easily in a fight because he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but Kluh has neither of those things holding him back. Just as smart as Bruce Banner and eager to murder, Kluh is a nearly unstoppable force of nature. Never fully defeated, the best his enemies could do was slow him down. Had the efforts to undo the inversion failed on Hulk like it did for the superior Iron Man, this evil Hulk could have burned the whole world to the ground. Axis gives readers a glimpse of just what makes our heroes so heroic by showing us their opposite. For the Hulk, that means a destructive power and anger unchecked by righteousness, paired with the intelligence of Bruce Banner. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Until next time, keep that plot on you. I'm KJ. Have a great day. Goodbye.